who are some of the more noteworthy IDPs from the AFC and NFC North for the upcoming season? Today, my special guest, Kyle Bellefeuil from Footballguys, and I are going to be answering that question for you and giving you some names of some players to take note of in the coming weeks. Kyle and I are diving deep into these two divisions that are loaded with top-tier talent, upside, and some serious league-winning potential. Whether you're eyeing breakout stars, looking for value picks, or just trying to stay ahead of your league mates, we've got you covered. All that and a lot more in this episode of the IDP After Show.
This is the IDP After Show.
Like I mentioned in the last episode with Bobby Reynolds, as we broke down the AFC and the NFC West divisions, these divisional previews are some of my favorite podcasts I get to be a part of for many reasons. One of those is I get to talk some football with some good dudes. And to me, one of the goodest dudes out there is with me tonight, Mr. Kyle Bellefeuil. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jeff, man, and appreciate the kind words, and the feeling's definitely mutual, dude. I appreciate you having me on, and I've been looking forward to doing this, man, talking some ball and hanging with you.
Perfect. Got you. You were busy today. You're putting in a pool.
Yep.
Coaching softball.
Yep. Pool liner, not the whole pool, but yeah. It's been a day. Been a solid Monday.
Yeah. So, Kyle, what we're going to do in this episode of the IDP After Show is we're going to take a look at a player that we like probably more than others for the upcoming season for each team in the AFC and NFC North for a total of 16 players in all. I'm really excited like you are to jump into this episode, so let's get to it. Let's start with the Baltimore Ravens. And Kyle, who's a player that you kind of like more this year for fantasy football than maybe the consensus right now?
The player I picked was Odafe Oweh, the edge rusher for the Ravens. It's a little bit easy to like Oweh, I guess, because he's coming off one of his best season. Last year was his fourth year, and it was his best to date. He had 39 tackles, 25 solos, and career best marks in sacks with 10 and tackles for loss with 9 on 636 regular season snaps, 56% snap share. He was a candidate who looked like he was in for some progression last season. And he hit the mark. He doubled the sack total from 2023 and posting his first double-digit sack season. However, his past metrics were fine. They weren't like glaring or anything. He had a 11.3% pressure rate, and his pass rush grade was in the green at 74.7 per Pro Football Focus. Fine and productive is okay, right? So just fine there. And the Ravens picked up Oweh's fifth-year option, so he's entering the final year of his rookie deal as a former first-round pick. So this is a big contract year for Oweh. He should be really eager to build off of his first 10-sack season last year and look to cash in when free agency gets here. We know these edge rushers, man, if they can hit it big on that contract year, right, the market's usually pretty nice for him. So he should be pretty eager there. And I'm typically I like to look at that. I mean, it doesn't mean everything, but I'm typically looking at those contract year guys because especially these young guys, if they're ready for their first big contract, if they can get it, right, coming off their rookie deal. I mean, they get paid well enough, better than me by a bunch. But the Ravens did bring in a talented second-round pick in Mike Green. Yeah, by a little. The Ravens did bring in talented second-round pick in Mike Green. It's nice to get excited about rookies. I like Green as a player. I think he's going to be good. But the veterans like Oweh and Kyle Van Noy should lead the way off the edge. Maybe the young guys mix in there, right? But the veterans should. Baltimore's a good team. They're going to be pushing contend for a Super Bowl here, so they're going to lean on their vets. So a fully motivated Oweh playing for a future deal is worth a look with his DL 52 price tag via the IDP show ADP. I kind of like that price, and I'm thinking he's going to look to carry that momentum from last year and turn in a big contract year season for himself so he can get paid.
I always like players that are playing on defensive lines that have great secondaries. And if you look at Baltimore's secondary, they are loaded with first-round talent. Like,
very good point.
Legit, their entire secondary is a former first-round pick.
Yep.
They just added, our player formerly of the Packers, Jair Alexander. They're pairing him with last year's rookie Nate Wiggins. They've got Malik Starks. They got Marlon Humphrey, who's a former first-round pick. And Kyle Hamilton's there. That secondary is just loaded with talent. And if that can give those defensive linemen a second more, those pressures turn into hits. Those hits turn into sacks. And so I really like that call, Kyle. I think he's going to have a great season. I like Baltimore as a team defense this year. Just unfortunate that they lost Washington. I think that would have been a nice chess piece too for that secondary to have. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a great point.
I'm going to
bring it up. Bring up that secondary.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to go to a linebacker here for them. Teddy Buchanan, 4th round pick this year. And usually I don't like to rely too much on rookies to make a big splash in IDP just because it takes them a year, and I'm still kind of licking my chops after Junior Colson last year, having everything going right for him and still not being able to produce. So, but the reason I like Teddy Buchanan, 4th round pick, like I said, he's ideal size. He's 6'2", 235. He did play 5 years in college. He took advantage of that COVID year, and we see a lot of players right now kind of coming out, having that fifth year of college play. But I think that kind of helps out with their maturity. It helps them like read defenses. And we see that linebackers typically take a year or two more to mature just to learn the position. And there's so much going on at that position. So to see that a little bit more maturity. He played 4 years at UC Davis, and he did transfer for his super senior season. He went to Cal, where he played 850 snaps. He graded out pretty well according to PFF. He had a 77.4 overall score, but he really excelled as a tackler, and he posted an 83.0 score as a tackler, where he racked up 97 combined tackles and on those 850 snaps. Now, if you do the math, that's good for an 11% tackle rate. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, 11% tackle rate isn't great. But if you look at those snaps a little bit deeper, you'll see that he played 429 of those snaps in coverage, which makes him even more appealing to me because that means he's going to be a true 3-down linebacker, and he's not going to be coming off the field in just passing situations. So for me, that means like 3-down linebacker. That means more availability to make plays. Splash plays, you ask? Well, in 2024, he had 6 sacks to go along with 4 hits and 15 hurries. So he can't get after the quarterback. He also forced 3 fumbles, and he also had 2 pass breakups in coverage. So over his entire career between UC Davis and Cal, he had 8 interceptions. So he knows how to make plays all over the field as a tackler and making big splash plays. Another layer to this is the Trenton Simpson experiment. Now, I know that he was kind of like everyone's like darling last year as a breakout player, but it never really materialized alongside Roquan Smith. So I know that he's probably going to get the early chance to get his job back. And I know there's already been some posts about he's like determined and he's doing all the right things, which everyone is doing all the right things in Jude. Everyone's in the best shape of their lives, all this kind of stuff. So we expect to hear those kind of things. But Teddy Buchanan is kind of like a super late round dart throw that I'm kind of willing to take a chance on. If we look at Simpson's numbers at the end of the season, in week 11, he played 65 snaps, but he was really trending in the wrong direction. In week 12, he played 30 snaps. In week 13, he played 22 snaps. And then he only had 26 more snaps the rest of the season. So that's kind of concerning that instead of a player trending in the upward direction, he was kind of trending in the wrong direction. So Simpson is a 3rd-round pick. He's heading into that 3rd magical year of a season. So he definitely could rebound, but he's maybe a player that maybe hedge your bet a little bit. And if you can buy low on Simpson and also have Buchanan and see how training camp goes, you'll have for sure have the LB2 there in Baltimore. So
yeah, dude, I like this Colin Buchanan. He's a guy I grabbed late in a lot of drafts. The more I dug into his tape, the more I liked him. He's well put together. He's got a bigger, solid frame. Athletic is all heck, and he makes, like you said, with the splash plays. He makes plays behind the line. He's a good tackler. He can hang in coverage. And Trenton Simpson, those Clemson linebackers just never quite pan out the way we want to. So we'll see if he can make it happen this season. But yeah, I like the Buchanan call, and Simpson's on notice.
It was kind of funny, like watching the draft unfold and stuff like that. And all of a sudden Buchanan went like in the 4th round. And I was like, ooh, like he was not a name I was expecting to go that soon. And so, obviously the NFL and Baltimore scouting team is a lot more in depth than what I am, but he was kind of one of those players I didn't expect to see go as early as he did on day 3. So that kind of got my interest peaked a little sooner than I thought I would. So.
Yeah,
all right, let's switch gears here to Cincinnati. So this team is kind of all over the news for all the wrong reasons right now. So, all right. So Kyle, you got a linebacker, another rookie linebacker for Cincinnati. You want to talk about little Demetrius Knight?
Yeah, let's talk about another rookie here. My first note here is, given what we've seen of late, I'm typically pretty cautious overall with rookie linebackers, but we're gonna throw caution to the wind a little bit here, Jeff, and go back-to-back rookie linebackers. So it takes time, and teams tend to, and they have the ability to exercise caution with them. But However, Knight's situation, I think, brings plenty of optimism. Just Knight as a player, he's a tough, physical, experienced player. He played like 6 collegiate seasons, 3 different places, I think, at least 2. His game looks fit for IDP production to me. He looks like he should transition well to the league. Like I said, he's experienced. I think the physicality plays with the size. Like he can hang. The Bengals investing a 2nd-round pick on Knight shows that they do have high expectations for him. It's pretty sound capital there. And, we also believe that Cincinnati was trending towards Jermaine Pratt's days being numbered with all the shenanigans going on there. And, well, as most of you probably know, if you pay attention to the good fellas here at the IDP show, Pratt was indeed released, leaving behind a starting role for the taking alongside Logan Wilson. So Knight looks like the leading candidate to step in. He'll likely face some competition from a veteran like Oren Burks, and maybe Barrett Carter, 4th-round pick out of Clemson. I just kind of crapped on the Clemson linebacker, so that'll probably come back to bite me here. But you never know, right? But while it's just May and June, Knight did get some first-team run during minicamp and OTAs and all that jazz. And I know it's early and not something to put a ton of stock into, but like we'd rather see it than not see it, right? That's kind of how I look at some of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's not, we don't have to like high alert it, but like, okay, it's happening and that's what we would like to see, right? You want to see it start off on the right foot. So I like Knight's game. And it's a situation I'll be following closely. I think he has the potential to be a rookie that just steps in. He's got the temperament, he's got the physicality in the game for IDP production, and the role is there with Jermaine Pratt gone and not a whole lot of competition. I mean, Oren Burks has been around the league. He's a veteran and all, but he's never really stepped in and taken a big time role anywhere he's been. So I'm excited to see Demetrius Knight. I think he could be a really solid rookie here with the pairing of, like when me and Macri were talking on the rookie linebacker pod, we wanted Knight to go like day 2 to a team with a weak depth chart, and he went 2nd round, which is pretty solid, to a depth chart that got weak really fast when Pratt got shipped up, sent packing, and now he's in Las Vegas. So I kind of all came in to what I was hoping we'd find out with him, because he's a player I really liked. And so I'm excited for him as a rookie.
Yeah, thinking about ideal situations, you have the draft capital, you have the opportunity, vacated snaps. Like this is like the script that you exactly want, and all the things are right now for Demetrius Knight. Where, Kyle, do you see him going in like a rookie draft right now? Where do you feel comfortable taking a stab at him?
The leagues I'm in, I mean, I'm in different leagues with different scoring. Some are tackle heavy, some are big play scoring, like the IDP show scoring, big 3 scoring, at some tackle heavy formats. I mean, I've had a couple early drafts where he was going in like the 3rd, and then I had one recently and he was like back into the 2nd, like he was the 2nd line, or no, it went, he was the 2nd linebacker off the board. Carson Schweissinger went 1st and then Knight went right after him. Yeah. And then I moved up for Campbell. Yeah. So I mean, I think you're going to have to, if you're drafting now, like in a rookie draft, we're talking rookies. You're going to have to probably be aggressive with, the way things are trending now. But I think he's in a great spot. Like you said, it all stacks up.
I like it. And like you said, it's tough to be excited about rookie linebackers because we've been burned numerous times, more than we want to count, but it's just so exciting. They're just like, just a bad drug. It's like that girlfriend in high school. You just can't okay, maybe this time it'll work out, but
I told myself never again after the Junior Colson deal last year, like you alluded to earlier, man, that was tough. So
I go back to the Ronaldo McClain days back when he was like, that was gross.
Yeah. I had a lot of shares. That one hurt.
Yeah. We'll get a therapy group starting. We'll start one after the show. So
count me in.
Well, we mentioned earlier that like Cincinnati is just a mess, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Like everything in the news right now is contract disputes and stuff like that. And, is Hendrickson going to sign? So one player that might be a player that kind of take advantage of that is Joseph Ossai. One word that kind of describes Joseph Ossai this season is opportunity. I think he's in for a really huge season as far as snaps can go. Now, we want to chase snaps because that leads to opportunity and leads to like points. But just because he's going to be out there doesn't mean that he's like his talent is there. But he's going to be a heavy volume play, I think, this year. So Shamar Stewart was drafted in the first round this last April. He might get drafted again next April, the way things are going. Hendrickson is holding out, and it doesn't sound like a lot of progress has been made right now on reaching a deal. That can really change quickly, though, as we've seen. Myles Garrett was going to be done, and all of a sudden he just signs this huge contract. So not out of the realm of possibility. Actually, I like the idea of Hendrickson signing to help out Ossai, because then more attention will be drawn to Hendrickson's way, which is obviously a good thing for Ossai. Myles Murphy hasn't lived up to his draft capital yet in his career. So if you're looking for great value in picks, whether it's season long or best ball, Ossai might just be the guy that fits that bill. Adam has Ossai ranked right now as DL 71 in the best ball rankings. And I know that opportunity isn't everything, but at some point he becomes a sheer volume play, like I mentioned. There really isn't much out there on the defensive line market right now. So as far as someone signing in Cincinnati to take some play away, even a player like Matthew Junod, I wouldn't be overly concerned with if he went there. Currently, Ossai is being ranked as a 156th player right now in Adam's best ball rankings, and he's only being rostered in 16% of sleeper leagues. And that just kind of feels criminally undervalued to me right now. Ossai did start to turn it on at the end of the last season. He did have at least a half a sack in every game but one from weeks 11 to 18. And over those 7 games, he had 24 tackles and 5 sacks. So if you have a roster spot and you're looking for some upside for a DL4 spot, I think you might need to do yourself a favor and check in on Joseph Ossai.
Yeah, I'm with you. And they brought him back on a 1-year deal, right? So, yep. I mean, there's a guy, right, that's trying to – he was kind of buried a little bit there in Cincinnati with Hubbard was still there. And then obviously Trey Hendrickson, they draft Myles Murphy, although, Myles Murphy hasn't really done anything and assumed much of a role. But yeah, Ossai's getting his chance. I always liked Ossai, even when he was at Texas. He was a fun player. He kind of played different roles there. And then when he transitioned to full-time edge in his final season, he was just a terror off the edge. And I'm excited about him too. I think he's one of those guys that could, like you said, the strong finish is encouraging. And then he's getting his first shot probably at a significant role there where he's not the third or fourth man in the rotation. He could be, I'd love to see him opposite Hendrickson, like you said. Absolutely. Yeah. We want them both there. So. Yeah.
I don't feel as good about Ossai without Hendrickson.
Yeah,
sure. Obviously, he would play a lot, but there's just no one to draw any attention away. You need a Hendrickson type player. Do you think they get a deal done? Do you think Hendrickson is playing in the jungle next year?
I mean, they got to figure it out. The dude's such a big part of it, right? If you want the defense to be anything, you need a dude who gets 17 sacks, right? I mean,
right?
Yeah.
This AFC North is crazy stacked on a defensive line. Every team in this division has elite pass rushers. Yep. Baltimore, we just talked about Ossai. Here we're talking about Hendrickson. The Browns obviously got Myles Garrett, and you're looking at Pittsburgh. They got the whole team as a defensive line.
Yep.
So it's just a division that needs it. And if Cincinnati has a prayer of winning some games, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase can throw, 8,000 times a game, but if you don't have a defense, at least keep it close. They can't play defense. So
you got to get stops. You got to get pressure, and you got to have coverage players, and you got to get pressure. So,
yeah. And without Hendrickson, I don't see a lot of pressures happening for the Bengals.
Exactly. So. Absolutely.
All right. Let's stick in the state here, and let's go to Cleveland. Who do you got, Mr. Kyle, for your pick here this season?
So my dude from Cleveland here is Mr. Grant Delpit, safety. Delpit just is a player who I always seem to target him in drafts. He plays the box role for the Jim Schwartz defense. Last year he spent 766 of his 976 snaps up in the box slot defensive line area. So that's 78.5% of his snaps up in the old IDP sweet spot. So we love that, right, for production. With Delpit spending the majority of his time up close, he piled up a career best 111 tackles last season, threw in another 7 tackles for loss and a sack over 16 games. So it was a nice year for him. He's not the flashiest of names or players per se in drafts. He doesn't have the allure of Kyle Hamilton or Brian Branch or Antoine Winfield or whatever. But if you don't get those guys, he is a steady player. His role is steady for IDP production because he's always up tight near the action. That's what we look for. And So yeah, if I like to fade DBs unless I'm feeling froggy in these best balls and want to take a stab early. And Delpit's always a guy I'm drawn to. I'm cool if he's my first defensive back for sure. So I mean, right now he's DB 22 via the IDP show ADP. I'm good with that price tag. I think there's another triple digit 100+ tackle season in store if he has another full season of health playing in that box role for Jim Schwartz's defense yet again.
Do you think DB 22 is too low?
I do. Yeah. I think he's he's easily top 15 for me just because of that role. It's kind of what I'd love to say Xavier McKinney's going to pick up a ton of passes and all this again, but I don't necessarily flock towards last year's interceptions. That's nothing new. Those aren't sticky stats. I'm always looking for the steady. If I'm fading the position, I want steady production. It's not a position I'm like chasing, just not in sticky stats.
Yeah, the sacks you can't chase and the interceptions definitely can't.
Right.
Kyle, are you good with Delpit being your DB1 on teams? Like if you, like you said, you like kick the can down the road and like you're fading the position, like which we think is a great strategy. You're good with him as your DB1? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm cool. That's why I probably have him. You know how it goes at rankings. You tinker every day, but I probably have him in that 11, 12, 13, 14 range, I'm sure, on a daily basis because I like the role and he's shown to be productive in it. So.
And the nice thing about that build, that roster construction is if you do end up with Delpit as your DB1, that means you're probably loaded at D-line, linebacker. You didn't take that early stab at like a Winfield or a Branch, like you mentioned, like all of a sudden now you're like even deeper at those like more core positions. So I like that strategy a lot.
Yeah, no, right on. And it's not to say that those top guys won't pay off their price. It's just my typical is I'm targeting that edge. And I like to get 2 solid edges, 2 solid linebackers early and go from there. If not 3, just let's build there. So,
well, I know the linebackers in Cleveland are going to be kind of a hot topic all summer long, especially as training camps get kicked off here in about a couple weeks. Now, I love me some Carson Schlesinger as much as the next guy, and like we've mentioned, our love-hate relationship with rookie linebackers. He just seems like he's in an ideal spot to do really, really well in his rookie season. Like he was literally the first pick of the second round. He was basically a first-round linebacker. But sadly, we have seen many rookie linebackers come into the league and kind of not have very successful seasons. And also pretty sadly that I don't think we're ever going to get a chance to see JOK in an NFL uniform again. And so for me, a linebacker that's going to be there is probably going to be Jordan Hicks. Hicks is going into his 11th year, so he's definitely that seasoned veteran. He's definitely lost the step, but what he's lost in speed, I think he can make up in diagnosing plays, and he does himself a favor in the pre-snap alignment. Like he gets himself in the right spot. Last season, every linebacker in Cleveland had a rough season, staying healthy, and Hicks was no exception. But his injury wasn't anything that required surgery or timetable or anything like that, so I think his return to play is there. Currently, Hicks is LB 39 on Adam's rankings over at the IDPshow.com, and that feels like a great place to grab him, especially for a linebacker that had almost a 13% tackle rate last season, and he offers a super high tackle floor each and every game he did play in last year. The big plays maybe aren't there for Hicks like they were earlier in his career when he was in Arizona and Philadelphia, but I love that high tackle floor that he provides me on a week-to-week basis. I love having Hicks as my LB3, LB4, and where I'm going into weeks like 4 and 5 is some weeks I'm probably going to get him as an LB2. But if I play in leagues that are in tackle heavy format, I'm okay with Hicks being my LB3. It's not hard to like Schlesinger this season, but we've gotten duped before, Junior Colson, especially last year, falling into that most ideal situation and leaving many managers feeling cheated. So for me, Hicks seems like a really solid veteran here that, as camps start here in July, we're going to start hearing his name a little bit more frequently. He's definitely going to be, doing the play calling there. So, and they don't have anyone behind them. There'll probably be a world where Mohamed Diabate is going to be a waiver wire gem week 7, week 8 here, just kind of looking into the crystal ball. So, sometimes some of these older vets get overlooked this time of year and everyone wants the flashy new toy. And so you can probably, get Hicks on the cheap. So.
Yeah, no, I like this call. I love Carson Schlesinger just as much as the next guy. I think he's going to be a great dynasty asset. He's a fun player, good player. But like you said, sometimes we just don't give these aging productive vets enough look of what they can give you, especially early in the season. Like, they're going to probably lean on Hicks. They're more than likely going to lean on him early in the season, like you said, to get everybody lined up, and he's going to be productive, like you said. He's been a solid producer when he's healthy, and they're going to lean on him early. And even if his role does fade as the years go on, part of the game is paying attention, as Johnny the Greek always says, making moves on the waiver wire, right? It's a spot you can fill. If we're drafting him as an LB3 or 4, right? Your team's he's not this key cog that, like, you didn't draft Fred Warner, you drafted Jordan Hicks. So, like, you're always looking to churn the back end of your roster. And he's a guy that, hey, if not even saying his role is going to fade, but if it does, right, you're already looking proactively for the next guy to fill it in. If it does fade and Schlesinger emerges and his snaps go down. So, but I like it. They're going to lean on the vets early, and you're going to get them at a value. So for sure.
Kyle, thinking about like a team like Cleveland, who's not projected to do well this season, do you do any like roster construction around, bad offenses where the teams might be losing a lot, so they get ran on a lot to close out games? Are you into that camp at all, or no?
It's something I definitely look at a little bit. It does factor in, right? Exactly. Like you said, if teams are down a bunch, they're just, the game script's going to lead to them you just stick it in the other running back for the last half of the fourth quarter. So it does, you might get, a few extra opportunities to get some points at the end, and that might be a little edge for you. But it's something I consider. I wouldn't say it's a huge part of the formula I'm looking at, but I think you're right. I think it's something to take into consideration for sure. Game script matters, right?
Yeah.
Especially if edge rushers, linebacker, the game script matters for them. They get the more chances they get to rush the quarterback when the game's. Well, if it's a team like you said that's not competitive, that it's going to be it's going to be a handoff fest at the end, and you want the linebacker. So.
Right. And here, as we sit at the end of June, beginning of July, every team is a contender. Every team is a Super Bowl contender right now. So, so we'll go with that. So,
yeah, exactly.
Well, one team that did make some moves today, looking at making a run at the Super Bowl, was the Pittsburgh Steelers. There was some moves that were made on the defensive and I guess the offensive side of the ball there. So, Kyle, who's a player that you're kind of excited about even before the trade today?
Right on. Yeah. I got to give one of the big fellas, old man Cam Heyward, defensive tackle, just absolute stud, and just the dude is just an ageless wonder. I think, he's just a beauty. He's just one of those ageless wonders. It just ages like fine wine. I don't know, man. So last year in his age 35 season, he piled up 71 tackles, 35 solos, 12 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 20 quarterback hits. Heyward also posted his third highest overall defensive grade at 90.1 and career best pass rush grade at 85.9 per PFF. So old man strength for the win right there, right? 35. So not only statistically, but he's even grading out well at age 35. Like, the dude is just, they talk about old man strength. He's got it, dude. This guy's showing no signs of slowing down. So I think
he was putting in today, even, right?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. Guaranteed. Maybe 3-4 of them.
Maybe 3. There you go.
Yeah. So even though he just turned 36, he's not showing any signs of slowing down. He's currently coming off the board as DL44 via the IDP show ADP. And I'm a buyer at that price. I mean, you're DL4 and you're getting 70 tackles, 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. I'm not saying he's going to exactly replicate those numbers, but I think he's going to be in that range of outcomes, right? Barring health. But I just think, and then also in true position IDP formats, I think he's a top defensive tackle target without the flashiest of names anymore. He was when he was younger, but I think there are going to be some drafts where he's going to go higher than others, but you could get him on the back end of the DT1, I think, range anyway. So I'm always looking at him there. And I just think, barring injury, of course, I think we're in for another big season here from Mr. Old Man Cam Heyward with the crazy old man strength, and before he does possibly pass the torch to Derek Harmon. So, I think the old man just keeps trucking along.
I like it. And like we mentioned earlier with Baltimore having all these first round talents in the secondary, Pittsburgh is kind of like the opposite. They have all this first round talent on the defensive line. Obviously TJ Watt, you just mentioned Derek Harmon, first round pick. You got Alex Highsmith is there. You got Nick Himbig is there. You got just this like overwhelming, like embarrassment of riches really at the position. And it's a position where Cam doesn't have all the focus on him because he has all this talent and he doesn't have the attention for double and triple teams, maybe like he used to, or if he was on a different team. So here, it's a lot of one-on-one battles. And like you said, even at his age, he's got the technique down that he can just win those one-on-ones and, put up, even at age 36, tackle one numbers for you. So I like that call a lot.
Right on, brother.
Perfect. Well, one player that probably was impacted a little bit by the trade today is my call. I'm going to go with Deshon Elliot here. He's fresh off a 3-year deal that he just got. He's coming off also a top 20 DB scoring season last year. And right now, I think Elliott is being grossly disrespected, as many defensive backs are this time of year. There's just so many to choose from, and it's impossible to kind of predict the position accurately from season to season, so I understand why. Elliott played in 15 games last year. He had 108 combined tackles. He sprinkled in 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and an interception. This was Elliott's first 100 tackle season in his career, but it was also his first with the Steelers, so I think that's kind of an important note too, like being in a defense that utilizes him and put him in a position to do well. I don't think that was a coincidence that just happened to be that way. He was a top 3 tackle rate at the position at 90.3, according to PFF last season. Right now, Elliott is DB 68 in current ranks, and that just seems really, really low coming off his best season as a pro, where he finished last year as DB 19 in Big 3 scoring. So if I'm getting a defensive back 2-3 at a defensive back 5-6 price in this economy, it just seems kind of like a no-brainer. Even for somebody who likes to fade the position, that just screams a lot of value. And then, kind of mentioning about the trade today too. So the Steelers traded away Fitzpatrick and we're getting Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey. I think that only helps out Elliott. I can see Jalen Ramsey playing more of that nickel spot. And then they've got Darius Slay on one side. They've got Joey Porter Jr. to play the under cornerback spot. So I think that kind of frees up Elliott to be the roaming in the box safety. Right now they have Julian Thornhill playing the free safety spot after the trade. I think this might be a great landing spot for an unsigned free agent right now, like Justin Simmons, to kind of anchor that back end. Like that would be an ideal like center fielder on this team, and that would even help Elliott even more because Justin Simmons over his career has been that deep center field safety, and then, like you said, we love those defensive backs creeping up into the box, playing that sweet spot. So I kind of like the deal for Elliott's long-term value. So you're muted, Kyle.
I'm muted. Okay, got it now. Yeah, I can't believe it took this long. No, I totally dig this call, man. Like you said, Elliott kind of played that more box role last year. He spent most of his time up in the box and slot. He kind of found that role fit him, and they just paid him. Do you know the details on was it extension or 2-year deal?
It was an extension, a 3-year extension. So
you gotta like that, right? You gotta follow the money, and when teams invest in players, you gotta believe in what they're paying him, right? And that they want him on the field if they're gonna hand over the ching. So I like it, and like you said, Juan Thornhill is the projected other safety who is your prototypical deep safety. He's really not a guy who's gonna come up and play up tight. So I think Elliott is gonna be more of the same. And I think that's a screaming value. Like you said, he's coming off in the 60s, right? So yeah, I like that call. Totally dig it.
Yeah. And like you said, like you mentioned too, with like Delpit kind of being a great value later, this is just, another name, another reason just to keep fading the position as much as you can, like you mentioned, like those top end guys, Branches, the Winfields, they're going to return on value, but there's also the value to be had late, and if you're scoring, Winfield and Branch are scoring like 16, 17 points a game. But if you're able to get like an Elliott 4 or 5 rounds later who's scoring you 13, 14 points a game, it's really easy to make up those 3 points, especially with big three scoring, at the defensive line position. Take a stab at like a Malcolm Kuntz or, my boy Jalix Hunt this year is going to be, doing some meetings. So yeah, players like that just want to, help you build your roster construction just a little better. So
absolutely.
The Super Bowl is the biggest event in sports, but Jalen Carter makes big plays and very few fantasy gamers care. That's going to change with the D-Up contest on Fast Draft. You draft 6 defenders. The top 4 enter your lineup every week. You can draft up to 30 teams. There's a $10,000 prize pool. And if you love Aidan Hutchinson, you can get big exposure to that guy. And every time he's making plays for the Lions, you're making money. It's such an easy game to play, and it's so fun to sweat both sides of the ball on Sundays. Of all the Fast Draft contests, it's the D-Up game that I think is going to really change how people play fantasy. Now use your host promo code to get a $50 deposit match when you deposit on Fast Draft. So, let's start drafting faster.
All right, buddy, we're going to flip over to the NFC North now, and this was a little harder for me just because we're both Packer fans and kind of looking at the division. Maybe wishful thinking. We don't want to give too much props to the other 3 teams in the division, but we've got a responsibility to listeners here to do what we need to do. So, who is a team or who is a player on the Bears who you kind of like this year? You don't really like, but you kind of like.
Kind of like him. Yeah. So my player I picked from the Bears is Kyler Gordon. Gordon had a fine 2024 season operating as the Bears nickel slot corner. 75 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a half sack, 5 passes defended. However, he had just a 78% snap share over 15 games. It's not as many as we'd like, right? If we're talking cornerbacks, there's plenty of them to pick from. Obviously, some snaps are more valuable than others. That's why we like these slot snaps rather than the out wide snaps. Anyway, 78% snap share is not certainly ideal, but his alignment was ideal anyway because he played 719 of his 724 snaps up in the box slot defensive line area, so he was up tight near the action. It was just the sub 80% snap share that wasn't super ideal with Gordon. But the Bears did just give Gordon a hefty 3-year, $40 million extension. And new defensive coordinator Dennis Allen commended him with his versatility, saying he wants him to learn playing outside and also at safety as well, along with his slot duties. So they want him to be versatile along with just his nickel duties. So while we'd love for him to just play in that slot area, we'd also love for him to be on the field 90% of the time, right? 90% plus of the snaps would be ideal for talking snap share. So the financial investment and potential to play multiple spots leads me to believe the snap share from last season's going up. We've also seen Allen produce some solid cornerbacks for us IDP gamers with like Alontae Taylor, who played the nickel for the Saints. Paulson Adebo, while he played outside, but maybe Tyreek Stevenson or somebody else comes into play there. But he was productive for Allen. And then we saw Ugo Amadi as a relevant waiver wire ad last year when he filled in the nickel. So we've seen this scheme produce productive corners for us. All this is adding up. He's someone I'm targeting in the later rounds of your deeper DB combined leagues, and someone I'm definitely targeting in true position or CB required formats. I like the process. I always liked Gordon. He's a feisty nickel corner. That less than 80% snap share I didn't necessarily like, but they paid him. Trusting they paid him to be out there, and they want him to learn different spots, which means they, if something isn't quite going the way they like it there, they might shift him around a little bit. But I think he's primarily going to play nickel. But the fact that he knows different spots means they want him out there. So we want snaps. We want more than 78%. So.
Yeah, being versatility, just keeping him out on the field that's what it's all about, especially with those position type players, the defensive backs. We just be on the field, however it needs to be. So, no, I like that call. And he's a name that's been mentioned numerous times. So he's really starting to gain steam, and that ADP of his is probably going to start creeping up, especially once training camp starts rolling around. So, and like you had mentioned, in those true position leagues, where he plays a cornerback spot, Johnny the Greek is smiling somewhere right now. So,
I couldn't go, a preview episode without bringing out a corner for my dude, Johnny the Greek, man. So,
he can
Shout
rest
Johnny.
easy.
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly. I want to keep his stress level down.
Yeah, he just turned off this episode. Thanks, Kyle.
It's over.
Yep. Time to go home, folks. So
yep. That's a wrap.
All right. Well, I'm going to switch gears here. I'm going to go with sometimes the easy answer is the right answer. And for me, this is one you don't have to overthink. When I'm thinking about a Bears player that I want, it has to be TJ Edwards. Edwards has had 4 consecutive seasons with more than 125 combined tackles. And I see no reason why, even with the new defensive coordinator, that he won't extend that to his 5th season this year. Along with his 129 tackles last season, Edwards posted 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, and an interception. The only thing that holds Edwards back this season would be an injury, and Edwards did deal with some soft injury issues last season, but again, those are nothing that is going to hold him back and nothing that he had to have surgery on or rehab from. So, this is just one of those things that NFL players get and have to overcome. So, can't happen. It can happen to any player at any time. So, no reason to fade him. The Bears will need Edwards to play over 1,000 snaps once again for this season, just because the only other player they have is TJ Edmonds, and the cupboard is pretty bare behind them. I did say bare, but that's not the right Tampa Bear. So Edwards is coming off the board as LB10 right now in Adams ranks, and he's LB6 in the D-Up contest over at the Fast Draft app. And this feels about the safest ADP over the last few seasons that you can have in a player. Edwards finished 2023 as LB5, and 2024 he finishes LB9. And it's not too often that you draft a player right where you predict them and they finish the season. And that's right what you get with Edwards. And so here you have Edwards doing it in back-to-back seasons, so there's no reason that he's not going to have the hat trick and get a 3rd time this time around. So roll him out as your LB1 and sleep soundly. So not a player you're probably going to get at a discount by any means, but he's definitely a player you can just kind of draft and not have to worry about him. So,
yeah, like you said, sometimes it's the right answer, right? And that was an elite play on words, by the way. I was muted, otherwise I was pumping you up. That was well done. But didn't Chicago just pay him 2 years, $20 million extension?
Yep.
So, right, another guy they're paying to be out there.
Chase the money.
Yep, chase the money and production. Like you said, he's been solid when he's out there. Keep on trucking along.
We have mentioned a lot of Wisconsin Badger players here in this episode. Like, wow, we've got a lot of guys that are, TJ Watt, Nip Himbig, TJ Edwards, like, whew. We got the LBU going here. So,
dude, the Badgers transition. Well, look at TJ Edwards was undrafted, right? It's like he's. Then you look at guys like, Chris Borland, but it didn't last long, but it was great. Zach Bond, right? He's all of a sudden, and then Joe Schobert was relevant for a while too. These Wisconsin linebackers stick around, man. And when they Borland was a short window, but it was great while it lasted. But yeah, these guys can ball, man.
Wasn't Sanborn? Yeah, Sanborn too, right?
Yeah, Sanborn as well. You're right. Yep.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah.
Maybe we can do a podcast just about those guys. So
yeah, let's start a Debbie Wisconsin Badgers podcast, and we'll just
the IDP niche just got a lot smaller. We went from like the fantasy football world to IDP. Now we're going to just like the Wisconsin Badger linebacker IDP league. So
yeah, just tell Josh, Adam, and Bobby to cut the check. We'll make magic happen.
Perfect. I'm sure they'll be fine.
Yep, it'll be
reverse stamp it.
Yep.
Well, since we're giving all these Badgers some love, now it's time to give a Wolverine a little love here. So going to the Lions, who's a player you're pretty excited, maybe coming back off a big injury here?
Yeah. I like you said, former Wolverine. I'm a Michigan fan, and we're talking Badgers. I don't hate the Badgers because I'm so close to Wisconsin, but Mr. Aidan Hutchinson from the Lions here. No real player analysis needed here to tell you about Hutchinson and how good he is. If you play IDP, you probably already know Hutchinson's a baller, right? But however, I'm just excited to see him back after that brutal injury he suffered last season. Hutch just feels to me like one of those players who enhance the game of IDP and just bring more fun to it because he's so fun to watch and he has the potential for those big games, and it's just exciting to have him on your roster. And he's one of those IDPs like that has attention from the normies, as Josh would call it, right? The NFL, like he's an exciting player for everyone. Normie analyst, as Josh calls it. We want him back. We want him back out there, right? We deserve it. But yeah, I think we were truly robbed of something special last year. It was gearing up to be a really special season for Hutch. Over his 5 games played before the leg injury, he racked up 7.5 sacks, aided by his 4.5 sack week 2 against Tampa Bay. 7 tackles for loss, 17 quarterback hits. His pass metrics were freaking electric. 22.7% pressure rate, and then 95.0 pass rush grade per Pro Football Focus. The dude was just going nuts to start the year. The injury was definitely a brutal one. Broken leg. It was nasty. If you want to get grossed out, go look at the clip on Twitter or whatever. It's gnarly. I don't need to see it for the 9,000th time. I know that. But brutal injury, but it sounds like his recovery is going well, and he was called a full participant in Detroit's June OTAs. Hutch is also the current favorite for Defensive Player of the Year on DraftKings at plus 650, just ahead of Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. So it looks like Vegas feels pretty good about his recovery. So I like that as well, right? So even as a Packer fan, I'm excited to see Hutch back out there, and I think he'll be ready and certainly be hungry to hit the field again and get after it after what we saw last year. And he's a young dude who's just full of piss and vinegar, man. So we want him back. Even as a Packer fan, I want him back out there. I got a couple of rosters, dynasty rosters he's on. So I can't wait to see him back out there.
Yeah, like you'd mentioned, like some players are just good for the game. He's one of those, like he could kind of be the new face of the defensive players for the NFL. Like he's an exciting player. He carries himself well. He's got all of the tools, the talent on the field, but he also seems like he's got the off the field stuff going for him in the right way. He does all the right things. He says all the right things. So he's just good for the game. So yeah. Detroit dealt with a lot of injuries last season, especially on the defensive line. And another one of those players that kind of dealt with some stuff. I'm always kind of looking for like those cheat code type players that kind of give me a little higher floor from week to week. And Derrick Barnes just seems to be one of those cheat code type players for me. Barnes is coming off his 5th NFL season, and he was, again, just rewarded with a contract extension through 2027, despite having an injury to his MCL and PCL that he suffered in week 3 of last season. So it's really uncommon for a team to give a contract extension to a player who's coming off kind of an injury like that, unless they really are excited about him and they really want him to be a part of what they're doing. So, clearly the Lions have a plan for him going into this season. He should be fully recovered from his injury since it was in week 3. In 2023, Barnes played 16 games. He had 79 tackles, a sack, and a forced fumble. Good for 120 points, a big 3 scoring. Now, again, you're thinking, well, 120 points out of my linebacker isn't anything great. But the sneaky thing and what makes him a cheat code is that Barnes has a lot of defensive line eligibility and a lot of formats, making him a really high floor DL4 to build your lineup around. Barnes is basically playing a linebacker position on the field, but if you can sneak him into your defensive line spot, he provides a weekly really high safe floor from week to week. In 2023, Barnes had just 3 games. Let's try it one more time. In 2023, Barnes had just 3 games in which he had 2 or fewer tackles in. And in 2024, before he left with the injury, he had 4 and 5 tackles in the full games that he played in. So I'm not expecting a huge splash play season out of Barnes. And so that's not the reason for Barnes in your lineup. But having him in my lineup as my DL4, if he can provide that really high safe tackle floor from week to week, and it saves me from getting that goose egg, I can maybe do a little different roster construction and go for those high upside plays on some of my other players. So Barnes is rostered in just 24% of sleeper leagues right now. He's ranked as the 99th linebacker in Adams ranks, mainly probably because of his injury. Like I mentioned, he's going to be fully healed by the time camp starts here in a few weeks. And it only takes a few preseason clips of him and his value to rise. So if you have an empty spot right now on any of your rosters, maybe just go check on see if Derrick Barnes is available, especially if he's defensive line eligible. So,
no, man, it's a great call too, because like his price is super cheap, right? And like you said, just got another guy all the money they paid him coming even with the injury and the position designation, the dual desi. I mean, right? That's knowing your league, knowing your format. If you can sneak him in there, so like right now he provides you with. We've seen him be productive when he's out there. He provides you with a nice little floor. Maybe you get a little more out of him, but you know what you're getting at maybe your last DL spot. And you can take a bigger swing at someone else earlier, knowing that you're going to have a solid floor guy there to fill it in because you're going to take him late, man. So strategy, just playing chess, man. 4D chess, 5D chess, whatever the kids call it. Yeah.
And the nice thing is that with Hutchinson coming back too, like he can have that attention drawn away from him. So like, like we kind of mentioned, like with Ossai benefiting from Hendrickson, like this would be the reason here. Like, as Jake Colhagen always says, rising tides raise all ships, right? So if we can get the SS Hutchinson back, we're going to be in a lot better place. So
love it. Shout out Jake. Just a beauty.
Yeah. All right. So this is probably the hardest team to talk good about. Got a lot of ties like with family in Minnesota. So this one's a little tough, but there's definitely some great players on the defensive side for the Vikings. So let's give a shout out to a couple of those players. Kyle, who do you got as your kind of, maybe this should be saved for a breakout episode even. This guy is one of those type plays. Who do you got?
Yeah. I chose Theo Jackson, safety from the Vikings here. I was writing different names down trying to go somewhere, but I wrote him up as a free agent signing in an article I wrote a while back as I dug into him a little bit. And he's popped up, people are talking about him. I know the boys on the IDP show are mentioning him and stuff too. I'm super intrigued with Theo Jackson as one of those late round, another Johnny the Greek shout out here, a Johnny the Greek price of a mouse click guy, right? You can get him late. You don't have to pay much, or he might be on your waiver wire in a league, right? And you can just throw him on the back in your roster and see what happens here. But he hasn't done much over his 3 seasons in Minnesota. They went out and plucked him off of Tennessee's practice squad, I believe, after he was drafted. And he's been with Minnesota the first 3 years. Hasn't done much. However, the intrigue with Jackson and the intrigue in all of it with me is Brian Flores' scheme and his keen usage of 3 safeties with heavy snap volumes, right? So last year, Cameron Bynum played 1,032 snaps, Harrison Smith 1,011 snaps, and Josh Metellus logged 991 snaps in his more box-heavy role, right? He's always up. So Bynum left for Indianapolis on a big free agent deal, leaving behind a role in 1,000 vacated snaps. We love that, right? Somebody's got to take them. Minnesota gave Jackson a 2-year, $12.6 million extension this offseason. He has familiarity with Brian Flores' scheme. We just haven't seen it yet, but he knows the scheme. Follow the money, right? We've been talking about that with a few players tonight, right? They just paid him instead of reaching out for someone else. Things are lining up for him to get his first shot at a prominent role in his 4th season here in Minnesota. So we're talking about these fade DB strategies, right? If you're a fade DB drafter in deeper IDP leagues, Jackson is a guy to keep in your back pocket for near the end of drafts that, you might be in a league with some sharks who are on him too. You never know, right? Maybe somebody is also thinking the same, but he's not going to go super early. You can get him late and you can see what you have. Right. And, that's, and if it doesn't come to fruition, it looks great now. I expect plenty of buzz to be surrounding him. They paid him. He's been there. There's the role for him. Take him late. If you get a gem, you get a gem. If not, we're turning and burning, right? We're going to get the next guy. But I'm intrigued with this safety deployment. I want to see if this sticks and see if Jackson fills that role and is a nice sleeper for us. Or breakout, like you said.
Yeah. And the thing with him too is like as great as it has been of a career for Harrison Smith, last year he was already starting to mention the R word a little bit, and I think once a player starts to think about it, they're closer to it than they want to be. Yep. And so, Harrison Smith has been on the back end of that defense. Like he was picking off like Don Mikowski passes. It seems like he's been there that long, The
magic.
So I think that like there's a world where Metellus is playing that like kind of like that hybrid linebacker role for them. And then it's going to be Theo Jackson because like you mentioned, Cam Bynum is gone. Harrison Smith is like a grizzly vet, And so like you said, that safety in the Brian Flores defense is like the creme de la creme. Like it's some fun stuff, So, and if you think about the teams that are in the NFC North, we have a lot of pass heavy teams that are a lot of volume. Detroit, a lot of volume. Green Bay, a lot of volume. Like Chicago, the Bears are even projected to be a lot of volume. So that's even more intriguing. It's going to be a lot of plays that are going to be there. So, volume
for sure, an opportunity.
Yes. So, a player that had a lot of opportunity last year, did not disappoint, was Jonathan Greenard. He had a tremendous season for the Vikings last year. Had it not been for Andrew Van Ginkel, another Badger, breakout season, we probably would have more people talking about Greenard. AVG had 49 pressures, which he converted into 12 sacks, 9 hits, and 28 hurries. Greenard had 80 pressures that he turned into 11 sacks, 10 hits, and a league-leading 59 hurries. So just imagine a world where a few more of those hurries become hits or sacks this season. And, Van Ginkel was a very efficient player with his pressures, which he turned into sacks and big plays. A lot of his stats were held up by 2 interceptions he returned for touchdowns. And like you had mentioned before, those are hard things to replicate from season to season, those sticky stats, like you mentioned. But one stat that's not sticky is pressures. And that's something that you can consistently do. And that's something Greenard has done over his career. And so that's one of those, like Greenard leaving a little meat on the bone. That's another Jake Colhagen saying that he left a little meat on the bone with some of those hurries, but he also left a little meat on the bone with 17 missed tackles. So again, imagine a world where a few of those hurries turn into sacks, where a few of those missed tackles turn into tackles, and you're looking at a really, really solid 2025 season. Now, Greenard is already highly thought of around the IDP world right now. He's going at the back end of like the DL1 kind of range. But playing in that Brian Flores defense, it's one of the highest blitz rates in the NFL. So it's easy to see a world where he kind of repeats last season once again. Greenard was 4th this past season in snaps, where he played 916. And for a player who's entering his 6th season, it seems like that's a really repeatable stat. Now, the team did draft Dallas Turner last year, a player I expect to take a little step forward this season. But I think those come at the expense of AVG and not Greenard. I don't think the Vikings signed Greenard and then got Van Ginkel thinking Van Ginkel was going to have the season he was going to have. I think that was just like a gift from Van Ginkel. But Greenard was kind of expected to play in this role. So I don't think that competition is going to interfere with Greenard snaps. Greenard finished last season as DL7, and just like Edwards, he's kind of a locked in at his ADP. Like you can just kind of draft him and feel good about it. So.
Yeah, I'm a big Greenard fan. I agree. Like, right, Dallas Turner should probably take a step this year. Good player, and he's young and evolving in that defense. But like that Flores, like you said, that Flores scheme is rock solid for IDP production. We're talking safeties, we're talking edges now. Like they do well on it too. Their defensive tackles should eat there, right? They brought in Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave. Like they got some talent along that front. It's gonna be, and I expect Greenard to just keep doing what he's doing. I think Turner's going to have more of a say in things this year, but I don't think Greenard's going to be dinged by it too much. I expect him to be a dude once again.
Yeah, I like it. All right, well, now comes the best part of the show.
Yeah,
Kyle, we get to talk about a team that very near and dear to our hearts, and we were kind of talking before we kicked off the episode. This was kind of tough because trying to look at this team maybe through rose-colored glasses, or maybe we're being too critical of a team. And so trying to find that player that we're really excited about, like we're excited about all 11 of the starters. So it's kind of hard to just pick one. So who is the player that you're kind of excited about more than the other 10?
Right. Yeah, it's tough, but we hold them all so near and dear, and you're trying to make the case for why we are excited. This one, a lot of people are excited about this guy, and that is second-year linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. Just a recap of his rookie season. He had 87 tackles, 57 solos, 13 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 4 passes defended, and an interception. This was on 491 regular season snaps, 55% snap share. Really solid statistical output for a rookie, considering it was a pretty slow start to the year. And then we saw the talent flash as he earned more reps as things went on. Cooper ended up starting 4 games last year. 3 of which came over the final 3 games when Quay Walker was out with an injury. So over those 3 starts, over those final 3 weeks, Cooper held an 87% snap share. With 2 of the games, he had a 90+% snap share in 2 of them. Recording 28 tackles, 20 of the solo type, and 6 tackles for loss over that 3-game span. That's 9 tackles a game, just a touch over 9 tackles a game, and 2 tackles for loss a game average. So while that sample size is small, you do have to appreciate that strong finish from Cooper when he got the added snaps right over that 3-game stretch. So on top of that, just because we're Packer fans, we got to talk about these guys as much as we can, right? He ended up earning 2 NFC Defensive Player of the Week honors, and he was the NFC's Defensive Player of the Month for the month of December, along with being on the 2024 All-Rookie team. So, like, he earned snaps as the year went on. People recognize the talent, and he finished strong. And I love that in players, especially the ones that are wearing Packer jerseys, Jeff, right? We can't not love it. So heading into year 2, Cooper is said to have put on 10 pounds. I probably have 2, but his is good, right? This is a good kind. So I puts him, they reportedly puts him close to about the 240 range, they're saying. And they're saying that it hasn't caused him to lose a step. He still has his speed and explosiveness that is part of his game and why he's such a playmaker behind the line and against the run and the coverage. So Jeff Hafley referred to Cooper getting his, adding the weight, good weight, still explosive. He referred to him putting this weight on to get his body ready to handle a 17-game season and for him staying consistent throughout the year, right? It's a violent position and, it's a physical game to say the least. So while Green Bay didn't necessarily run, 2 full-time linebackers in Hafley's system last year all the time by any means, it sounds like Cooper and Hafley are getting, both of them are getting, Cooper's getting himself ready. Hafley's preparing him and getting him ready for an expanded role after that promising rookie season, strong finish. Cooper has the ability to play all 3 downs. I think he can impact the game behind the line with the splash plays, the tackles for loss, the sacks. It's what makes everything so exciting. He saw it against the run, and I think he can hold his own in coverage. I think he can hold his own on it. He can make the splash plays. He can play the run, and he can play the pass. Every level he can affect the game, and I think he's gonna. It's only going to 2nd season, so the progression with him, I think he's a good player, and we got to see it. And I think he's just going to keep getting better. So I think it's wheels up. I'm all in on Cooper. I know I'm biased. I'm a Packer fan, but I loved what I saw. I liked him when we drafted him. I liked him as a player coming out, everything he brings, and we got to see it as the year went on, like why we spent the 45th overall pick or whatever it was on this guy. I'm all in on Cooper this year.
And it's kind of shocking that he was still available at pick 45 because there were a lot of teams like, oh, here he comes. This is the one guy who's going to come off the board right here. And it was almost like, wow, they just gifted us this play, Texas A&M, right? So a lot of pass rushing specialists. Yeah. So yeah, good stuff. So I'm going to kind of go complete opposite. So you're pumping up Edgerrin Cooper for all the reasons that you had just mentioned, Kyle, about Cooper are all the reasons I think that Walker is kind of getting pushed down draft boards right now, this time of year. Walker did miss some time last season with an ankle injury, but he was still able to produce his 3rd consecutive 100 tackle season. Now heading into year 4, he's playing for that big contract extension. They didn't renew him for that 5th year option. And so how many times have we seen a player have a real big season just before they're to sign a big contract, whether it's in Green Bay or somewhere else? Now there have been some rumblings about the Packers and Walker trying to get a deal finalized or get a deal worked out. Almost be more motivating for him if they didn't get a deal worked out. So it could maybe be a little more enticed to have a big season. But he's been very consistent as a tackler in his time in Green Bay. He was drafted 22nd overall in 2022, and he looks poised to probably play that middle linebacker role again in 2025. Kyle, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'll play a little game.
Yeah.
Playing a little this or that, okay? Would you rather have this, Quay Walker, or Alex Singleton?
So redraft. We're just talking redraft, right?
Yep, just this season. Yep.
You know what? I'm going to say Quay Walker just because Singleton's coming off injury. I tend to.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to say Quay
Cody
Walker.
Barton.
Quay Walker.
Dre Greenlaw.
Quay Walker.
Aziz Al-Shire.
Aziz Al-Shire.
Patrick Queen.
Quay Walker.
Jack Campbell.
Jack Campbell.
Ivan Pace.
Quay Walker.
Alex Anzalone.
Quay Walker.
So it's funny. Quay Walker right now is ranked 32, 32nd. Alex Singleton is 24. Cody Barton's ranked 25th. Drain Greenlaw is 26. Al Shire is 27th. Queen is 28. Campbell's 29. Pace is 30. And Anzalone is 31. And you, like I did when I was going through that, like I would almost rather have all of those players maybe outside of Campbell than, like drafting almost a whole round of linebackers in front of him. So here's a guy that's got ranked 34th as his linebacker right now, almost late third, almost the fourth LB. I think I would much rather have him, getting him at that value than a player like Singleton coming off an injury. Al Shire with the whole, like they've got EJ Speed now there. They've got Henry 202020 and all that kind of stuff. And they've got Christian Harris still there. So, there's a lot of like players there trying to get snaps. Patrick Queen hasn't been the player that he was in Baltimore, but in Pittsburgh, he's kind of struggling. Ivan Pace, they do a lot of one linebacker looks in Minnesota, so Blake Cashman's there. It's like, wow, there's obviously we can pick holes in every player, but like kind of looking at that, like I'd rather like draft somebody else and then take a Walker, a full round of linebackers later. So, and I think that's kind of the problem. And I don't mean problem in a bad way. I mean, problem is like you call them, what did you call them? The normies?
The normies. Yeah. Well,
the normies.
That's Josh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Josh.
So like these normies, they might get their information from a more casual manager, might use like Fantasy Pros, and they're going to find Walker, who is ranked at LB 18. And according to the rankers in the last 30 days, and that price has all of that upside kind of sucked out of it. That's, like you're not getting good value at 18 because, you're projecting him to get so late. So, and I think if you draft him at 18, you might get disappointed getting him there. So, but if you're getting him at 34, you won't be as disappointed. Now, looking at many of those names and how they're ranked, we can kind of like maybe acquire better targets and kind of going after that. It's interesting that Cooper is actually ranked linebacker 34 in those exact same rankings. So almost flipped, so, taking nothing away or not promoting Fantasy Pros or taking anything away from what they do there, but it's just kind of interesting, just the different evaluations of players and where you can get it. So that's why it never really hurts to ask a manager what they would need for a player rather than making some offer that you think is fair. You might be overpaying in your mind. So, it never hurts to play that game of like, hey, what do you need for a Quay Walker? And, kind of depending on where they get their information from, Quay Walker might be a depressed value player in their mind. You might be able to get them on the cheap, like, hey, how about Alex Singleton for Quay Walker? And like, I'll do that every day, Al Shire right now had a great couple seasons, with Tennessee and with Houston last year. Hey, I'll do Al Shire for Quay Walker, and maybe you can even get a late piece in there. So just kind of play that game a little bit. So didn't mean to take you down that rabbit hole too far.
No, but, it's fun. It's a fun game, right?
Yeah. This or that, huh?
So. Yeah. No, I dig it. I like being put on the spot, man. It makes.
And just for all the listeners, I did not preface that before the show at all. So Kyle had no idea that was coming. So that was perfect that he did almost the exact same exercise that I did about who I would want versus theirs. So that was very authentic. So
yeah.
So Kyle, you're working over at the Footballguys. What are you working on over there right now?
Oh yeah. Did some rookie stuff right after the draft. Me and Jody Tooth did a top 40 big board after the draft, and we did some pre-draft profile articles and stuff. Then just been doing rankings and stuff. Softball season's hit, and I'm busy as could be with my two little ones. So I haven't not a whole lot coming out of me other than updating my dynasty redraft ranks. But once training camp and things start kicking off here, I'm gonna have a weekly. Just like a IDP update news thing. Just kind of, I did it last year. Just kind of hit like 8 to 10 topics, just on whether it's injuries or contract extensions or who's doing this, whatever. Just stuff I'm looking at anyway. So why not just throw some notes into something and click submit? Just something out there. So it'll be fun to get writing again a little bit. It's been pretty quiet in that respect for me lately with things going on, but and then in season I'll be writing up the waiver wire and doing the projections, rest of season projections again. That fries my brain to keep up with stuff, but it keeps you in the game too, right? So yeah, looking forward to it. You know, season training camp's just around the corner, and the season is too.
So over at Footballguys, that people can find your work there, Kyle, is there another place like on X or that people can follow you or find some more of your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me over at footballguys.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at KBell54. Not posting much these days, but feel free to shoot me a DM if you have any questions. If I can help with anything, I'm always happy to help or just chat or whatever, man. So yeah, I'm around.
Kyle just gave everyone the green light to slide into his DM.
Yeah. Yep. Right, I did. Yep. Yeah, I said it.
Yep, you did. So, all right. Well, that's officially going to do it for this episode of the IDP After Show. I'd like to thank my special guest, Kyle, for taking some time out of his softball schedule, his putting in pool liner schedule, his golfing schedule, to talk with me about some players that he's excited about from the AFC and the NFC North for the upcoming fantasy football season. If you're not doing so already, please make sure that you're following Kyle and be sure that you subscribe to the entire family of podcasts here at the IDP Show. Lots of great content coming our way in just the next few weeks as training camps are just around the corner. Next time, I'll be joined by Jason King from DLF, and we're going to be talking about some players that we like from the AFC and the NFC South that are intriguing at this time. So be sure you look on the lookout for that one because that will be dropping soon. Until then, for Kyle and myself, we say thank you for listening, and we'll catch up with you next time.
This was the IDP After Show.